You know what's fascinating about human connection? We all say we want love. We crave it, we ache for it. But when it finally arrives, some of us run from it, we push it away. We build walls so high that even the person who loves us most can't see over them. And when that happens, the other person starts to think, they don't care, they don't want me. But listen closely, because this truth might change everything for you. The avoidant isn't rejecting you. They're waiting for you to reach out. You see, avoidance is not apathy. It's fear disguised as distance. It's the nervous system saying, I want closeness, but closeness feels dangerous. They're not avoiding you. They're avoiding the pain they once felt when love meant loss, when vulnerability meant hurt. And here's the divine paradox of love. The person who seems to pull away the hardest is often the one who needs connection the most. So, what does that mean for you? It means you get to be the one who interrupts the pattern. You get to choose love over ego. You get to be the one who says, I see your fear and I'm not afraid of it. Because real strength, divine strength, is not found in walking away. It's found in understanding, in compassion, in leadership through love. Listen, anyone can react. Anyone can match silence with silence, coldness with coldness. But it takes mastery to rise above that, to say, I will not let your fear dictate my love. I will not let your past define our present. Maybe right now they're quiet. Maybe they've withdrawn. But that silence, it's not a door slammed shut. It's a pause. It's a sacred moment waiting for courage to enter. And maybe that courage has to come from you. Because when you reach out, not from neediness, not from chasing, but from grounded, unconditional presence, something shifts. Their nervous system recognizes safety. Their heart remembers trust. And what was once distance becomes possibility again. So ask yourself right now, are you willing to love at a higher level? Are you willing to lead with grace even when fear is loud? Because love is not about waiting for the other to change. It's about becoming the change that awakens love again. And when you do, you don't just heal the relationship. You heal yourself. You step into your divine nature, the part of you that knows connection is sacred, that knows every wall can crumble under the power of compassion. So yes, the avoidant may be waiting, but not for words, not for a text. They're waiting for a vibration, a frequency of peace, of acceptance, of unwavering love. And when that energy comes from you, walls fall, hearts open, and what once felt impossible becomes inevitable, because love always finds a way. And maybe, just maybe, you are the way. Avoidance is not indifference. It's protection. It's a defense mechanism, born not from coldness, but from fear, not from the absence of love, but from the presence of wounds too deep to expose again. When someone develops an avoidant pattern, it's rarely because they don't want connection. It's because connection once brought them pain. Somewhere along the way, love equaled danger. Vulnerability meant rejection. Openness meant losing control. So now, instead of leaning in when things get close, they pull away. Instead of saying, I'm scared, they go silent. Instead of showing their need, they hide it behind independence, self-sufficiency, and the illusion of not caring. It's easy to mistake that behavior for indifference. You might look at their withdrawal and think, they just don't care. But that's not the truth. What you're witnessing is their nervous system trying to protect them. It's the body's ancient response to threat, not a physical one, but an emotional one. When intimacy triggers old memories of hurt, the avoidance instinct is to retreat to safety. Their mind rationalizes it. I need space. I'm better alone. This is too much. But beneath those thoughts lies a trembling inner child who once reached for love and didn't find it, who learned that closeness was dangerous territory. To understand avoidance is to see past the mask. It's realizing that the cool detachment, the silence, the emotional distance, these are armor, not identity. They're survival strategies, crafted in moments when connection felt unbearable. Some people learned early that expressing emotion led to rejection or shame. Others were taught that dependency was weakness. And so they grew strong in appearance but fragile in heart, capable of doing life alone, yet terrified of letting someone in deep enough to see their truth. When you love someone with avoidant tendencies, you are loving someone whose nervous system is wired for withdrawal when closeness grows. They might crave connection, but simultaneously resist it. They might send mixed signals, come close, then go away. This push-pull dynamic isn't manipulation, it's confusion born from trauma. One part of them is yearning to be seen, while another part is guarding the gates. That inner conflict can be exhausting, not just for you, but for them too. The tragedy is that avoidance often hides profound sensitivity. The avoidant feels deeply, sometimes more than they can handle. They sense energy, tone, rejection, and expectation at an intense level. So, to survive that emotional overload, they numb it. They tell themselves, I'm fine, I don't need anyone, I'll handle it. And that becomes their identity, not because it's who they truly are, but because it's who they had to become. Understanding this changes the way you respond. Instead of taking their distance personally, you begin to see it as a sign of fear, not disinterest. Instead of reacting with anger or hurt, you can meet them with compassion and grounded energy. Because the avoidant doesn't need to be chased. They need to feel safe. They need to sense that closeness won't drown them, that connection can exist without suffocation or expectation. If you want to reach an avoidant heart, you cannot do it through pressure, you do it through presence. You hold your own center so strongly that they can trust the stability of your energy. You communicate without force, love without demand, and allow space without resentment. This is what melts the armor, not pleading for closeness, but embodying safety. When the avoidant feels that your energy doesn't threaten their autonomy, something miraculous happens. Their walls start to soften. They begin to test closeness step by step. They might open up in small ways, show emotion briefly, or express something raw before retreating again. It's a process, not a one-time shift. But every time they come forward and you meet them with acceptance instead of judgment, they learn a new truth, that love doesn't have to mean losing themselves. Avoidance, then, is not a rejection of love. It's a cry for safe love. It's a soul saying, I want to connect, but I need to know it won't hurt this time. To recognize this is to move from reaction to compassion, from fear to leadership. Because when you stop interpreting avoidance as indifference, you start relating to the real person beneath the armor, the one who's been waiting for someone patient enough to stay when they pull away, steady enough to love them even when fear speaks louder than their heart. Their silence is a signal, not a rejection. When someone with avoidant tendencies goes quiet, it's easy to interpret that as a message of disinterest, as if they've stopped caring or have emotionally checked out. But silence in this context is rarely an ending. It's a coping mechanism, an internal retreat where they attempt to regulate overwhelming emotions. The avoidant doesn't know how to ask for safety. Instead, they create it through distance. What you perceive as rejection is often their attempt to find balance within themselves, to reduce the noise of emotional intensity that feels too heavy to bear. In moments of closeness, the avoidance nervous system is activated. Love and connection, for many people, bring comfort and joy, but for the avoidant, they can trigger alarm. Their body interprets intimacy as danger, not because it is, but because somewhere in their past, it was paired with pain, loss, or betrayal. So, when a conversation becomes vulnerable or emotions rise too high, they go silent, not to punish you, not to manipulate you, but to protect their equilibrium. They retreat into that quiet space because it feels like the only way to survive emotional overload. This silence can feel like abandonment to you. You might replay every moment in your head searching for what you did wrong. You might feel the ache of distance, the sting of unanswered messages, the weight of not knowing. But the truth is, the avoidant silence says more about their fear than your worth. It's not that they don't want to communicate. It's that communication requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like exposure. When they go quiet, it's because words have become too risky. They'd rather be misunderstood than emotionally naked. If you can learn to see silence as a form of communication, everything changes. You begin to understand that withdrawal is not a void. It's an expression of fear. It's them saying, without words, I'm overwhelmed right now. I don't know how to handle this. I need to feel safe again. Their silence then becomes a message in itself, one that invites compassion instead of reaction. Instead of filling the space with panic or blame, you can hold it with patience and presence. The avoidance quiet moments are where they try to make sense of their emotions. They analyze, suppress, and rationalize. They might convince themselves that they're fine, that they don't need anyone, that solitude is strength. But underneath that mental noise lies an inner longing, a desire for connection that feels just out of reach. They want to be close, but not consumed. They want love, but on terms that don't reignite old wounds. Silence becomes their temporary refuge until they feel strong enough to re-engage. To the person on the other side, this can be maddening. It can feel unfair to be met with silence when you're offering love, to feel like you're shouting into a void. But if you can look beyond the discomfort, you'll see the deeper reality. They are not closing the door. They're catching their breath. Their silence is the pause between fear and courage. It's the moment where they decide whether it's safe to come closer or safer to stay hidden. This is why your response matters so deeply. If you respond to silence with anger, pressure, or accusations, the avoidance defenses tighten. They interpret your reaction as confirmation that closeness equals conflict. But if you respond with calm, grounded energy, if your presence communicates safety, not demand, they begin to relax. They learn that silence doesn't have to destroy connection, that love can hold space for discomfort without punishment. Over time, this changes everything. The avoidant learns that they can go quiet and still be loved. They realize that silence doesn't have to mean separation. And in that realization, something powerful happens. They start to trust. They begin to believe that they can stay connected even in moments of fear. That belief, more than any words, begins to heal the avoidant heart. So, when silence comes, don't assume it's rejection. It's communication in a different language, a language shaped by pain, fear, and self-preservation. The key is to listen without judgment, to see beyond the absence of words, and to understand that in the quiet, they're not turning away from you. They're trying to find their way back to themselves. And sometimes, the most powerful way to love them is to hold space until they do. You hold the power to transform the dynamic. It's one of the most liberating and humbling truths in relationships, that change doesn't always require people to move at once. When one person shifts their energy, their perception, and their response, the entire relationship recalibrates. This isn't about control. It's about influence. It's about understanding that energy leads energy, and the state you hold within yourself directly impacts how others respond to you. With an avoidant person, this principle becomes especially profound. Their instinct is to retreat, to protect, to maintain distance. But when you shift the atmosphere of connection from fear to safety, their defenses start to relax almost naturally. We often underestimate the spiritual and emotional power of one grounded human being. When you're centered in your truth, when you're anchored in peace instead of reaction, you become a stabilizing force. The avoidant is used to chaos, emotional intensity, arguments, over-explanations, the desperate pull of someone needing answers or closeness. That energy triggers their nervous system into shutdown mode. But when you bring calm consistency instead of intensity, they begin to feel something unfamiliar, safety. And safety, for someone who fears closeness, is the most magnetic energy there is. Transformation begins when you realize that you don't have to fight for connection. You embody it. You don't have to demand openness. You invite it by how you show up. Every word, every gesture, every silence carries energy. If your energy says, you must open up so I can feel safe, you're still operating from fear. But if your energy says, you are safe even if you're not ready yet, that's love in its highest form. Love without control, compassion without expectation. That's the vibration that heals avoidance. Not through argument or proof, but through consistent emotional leadership. Emotional leadership doesn't mean you suppress your feelings or pretend everything's fine. It means you take responsibility for your inner state so that you're not reacting from pain but responding from power. It's choosing presence over panic, clarity over confusion, patience over pressure. You become a mirror that reflects peace rather than fear. And the avoidance system, which is wired to detect danger, starts to pick up on that calm signal. Slowly, their body learns that being close to you doesn't equal losing themselves. This shift can feel subtle, almost invisible at first, but it's deeply spiritual. It's the moment when you stop needing to be understood and start focusing on understanding. When you stop chasing validation and start embodying love, you realize that your worth is not determined by whether the avoidant reaches back. It's defined by your capacity to stay grounded in who you are, no matter what they do. And paradoxically, it's that detachment from outcome that creates space for genuine connection to grow. When you hold steady energy, the dynamic transforms because you're no longer feeding the fear cycle. In an avoidant relationship, there's often a dance of pursuit and withdrawal. One person chasing, the other fleeing. The more you pursue, the more they retreat, reinforcing the pattern of disconnection. But when you break the pattern by choosing presence instead of pursuit, the rhythm changes. Your stillness becomes magnetic. You're no longer chasing them. You're inviting them, energetically saying, there's no danger here. The transformation you create doesn't just impact the relationship. It ripples into both lives. The avoidant starts to feel emotions they've buried, gratitude, trust, even longing, because the environment now feels safe enough for those feelings to surface. And you, the one who chose to lead with love, discover a new level of power within yourself. You realize that strength isn't about forcing outcomes, but about embodying the state that invites them. This is divine leadership, leading not with words but with energy. It's the silent power that turns tension into tenderness, fear into freedom. The moment you shift your focus from changing to mastering your own energy, the entire dynamic changes. The avoidant begins to sense a new rhythm, one where they are free to be themselves, free to take small steps toward closeness without judgment. And in that space, healing happens naturally. So yes, you hold the power to transform the dynamic. Not by chasing, convincing, or proving, but by being. By standing so firmly in love that fear has nowhere left to hide. That's how patterns break. That's how hearts reopen. That's how two souls learn, together, that love doesn't have to be a battlefield. It can be a sanctuary. Love is leadership. It's not passive, and it's not weak. It's not about waiting for the other person to change before you decide to show up differently. Love, in its highest form, is a conscious act of spiritual leadership, the ability to hold vision, direction, and stability even when emotions are turbulent. When you're in a relationship with an avoidant person, this principle becomes sacred, because while they pull away out of fear, uncertainty, or overwhelm, your grounded love becomes the compass that guides both of you back toward connection. Leadership in love doesn't mean control. It's not about forcing outcomes, demanding closeness, or manipulating someone into vulnerability. True leadership is service. It's the willingness to go first, to be the one who models safety, who demonstrates emotional maturity, who creates the energetic environment where trust can grow. When love meets fear, leadership is what keeps the relationship from collapsing under the weight of misunderstanding. The leader in love doesn't react, they respond. They don't mirror fear, they anchor peace. They hold the space for what's possible, even when the other person can't yet see it. In every connection, there's an unspoken exchange of energy. When fear rises in one person, it seeks a match. If you respond with your own fear, panic, neediness, anger, the energy amplifies and spirals downward. But if you choose to stay grounded, if you remain connected to your inner sense of peace, you interrupt that spiral. You model a new vibration. You show the avoidant person, without words, that love can coexist with space, that connection doesn't have to suffocate. This is leadership at the energetic level, guiding through being, not through talking. Leadership in love is also about responsibility, the radical kind. It's the understanding that your emotional state is your job, not theirs. You stop waiting for them to show up in a way that soothes you, and you become your own source of stability. This doesn't mean you tolerate neglect or pain. It means you rise above reactivity. You become emotionally intelligent enough to hold your boundaries with compassion. You can say, I love you, but I will not chase you. Not from resentment, but from respect, both for them and for yourself. That clarity, that unwavering presence is magnetic. The avoidant, who expects chaos or control, starts to feel something foreign, safety, and safety is what allows them to come closer. Love as leadership also means understanding timing. The leader doesn't rush the process. They don't demand immediate results. They trust that transformation unfolds at its own pace. They know that consistency is more powerful than intensity. The avoidant person doesn't open up because of one big emotional conversation. They open up because of repeated experiences of calm, understanding, and trust. Every time you respond with love instead of reaction, you're reprogramming their nervous system to believe that connection can be safe. That's leadership. Patient, intentional, spiritual leadership. And yet, leading in love requires strength. It means staying anchored when the other person disconnects. It means managing your own fears of abandonment, rejection, or not being enough. It means learning to stand in love without losing yourself in it. Many people mistake love for submission, as if to love deeply means to ABA. D on your boundaries. But true love, real leadership, has structure. It has clarity. It has dignity. It's saying, I can love you through your fear, but I won't betray my peace to do it. That kind of love elevates both people because it's rooted in truth, not codependency. Leadership in love also invites forgiveness, not blind forgiveness, but the kind that understands pain without excusing it. You begin to see that the avoidance distance isn't a reflection of your inadequacy, but a reflection of their fear. And when you stop taking it personally, you create space for compassion to do what control never could. You become the leader who heals through grace, through steadiness, through unconditional presence. Ultimately, love is leadership because it requires vision, the ability to see not only what is, but what could be, to look at fear and see potential, to face distance and still choose connection, to meet silence with understanding instead of judgment. When you lead with love, you remind the avoidant and yourself that intimacy is not a battlefield, but a journey toward wholeness. And when one person steps into that kind of leadership, both souls rise. Because true love doesn't demand, it guides. It doesn't chase, it invites. And it doesn't control, it creates a space where fear has no choice but to transform into trust. Compassion breaks defenses. It is the universal solvent that softens even the hardest hearts, dissolving walls that logic, persuasion, or pressure could never penetrate. In the realm of emotional avoidance, compassion isn't just kindness. It's strategy, it's wisdom, it's spiritual power in motion. When you're dealing with someone who guards themselves fiercely, who seems unreachable or unresponsive, compassion becomes the bridge that reconnects what fear has divided. It's the one energy that speaks directly to the human heart, bypassing ego, bypassing defense, and reminding the other person that love can be safe again. Avoidant individuals often live behind invisible armor. That armor wasn't built overnight. It was forged in moments of pain, rejection, neglect, betrayal, experiences that taught them that vulnerability equals danger. Every time they felt unseen or misunderstood, another layer of protection formed. Over time, the armor became their identity. They learned to survive by suppressing needs, numbing feelings, and controlling emotional distance. But inside that armor lives a human being, tender, sensitive, craving love but terrified of it. Compassion is what sees that hidden self. It looks beyond the behavior and recognizes the wound beneath it. When you approach an avoidant person with frustration or accusation, their defenses immediately rise higher. They feel cornered, unsafe, misunderstood. It doesn't matter how right your words are. They can't receive them because their nervous system interprets confrontation as danger. But when you approach with compassion, everything changes. Compassion disarms. It creates an energetic field of safety where defenses have no reason to exist. It says, I see your fear, and I'm not here to attack it. It communicates acceptance, not judgment. And in that acceptance, the avoidant begins to exhale. Compassion isn't pity, it's understanding. It's the ability to look at someone's withdrawal and say, I know this isn't rejection, this is protection. That shift in perception transforms your energy completely. You stop personalizing their behavior and start recognizing the emotional truth behind it. When you move from hurt to empathy, you radiate calm. That calm energy becomes medicine to their nervous system. They start to sense that it's safe to lower their guard, even just a little. And with each act of gentle understanding, their defenses lose power. Real compassion requires maturity. It's easy to love when someone is open, affectionate, and available. It takes spiritual strength to love when someone is distant, fearful, or inconsistent. Compass. Ion doesn't mean you allow mistreatment. It means you respond from truth instead of reaction. You can hold boundaries and still be loving. You can say, I care for you deeply, but I won't chase you, with softness instead of bitterness. That's the balance compassion creates. Strength without hardness, love without self-abandonment. The magic of compassion lies in its ability to reach where words cannot. Sometimes the avoidant doesn't need you to fix, analyze, or explain. They need to feel your presence, steady, warm, and non-judgmental. Compassion isn't always verbal. It's energetic. It's the softness in your tone, the patience in your timing, the peace in your presence. It's saying through your energy, you are safe with me, even if you're not perfect, even if you're scared. That message penetrates the deepest defenses because it mirrors what every wounded heart secretly longs to hear, that they are lovable even when afraid. Compassion also transforms you. It expands your capacity to love beyond condition. It teaches you to see with spiritual eyes, to recognize that every defensive behavior is just love disguised as fear. It humbles the ego that wants to be right and empowers the soul that wants to be whole. Compassion doesn't require agreement. It requires awareness. It's the conscious choice to see pain without becoming it, to hold space for another's healing without losing your own peace. Over time, compassion becomes the quiet teacher in the relationship. It shows the avoidant person that love doesn't demand, it understands, that they don't have to perform or hide to be accepted. Every time you respond with empathy instead of anger, their nervous system learns a new pattern. That connection can exist without chaos. That intimacy doesn't have to be punishment. That love, in its purest form, is safe. And when those defenses finally start to fall, what emerges isn't just closeness, it's authenticity. The avoidant begins to show up as they truly are, not who they think they have to be. They start to share, to trust, to reach back. And that transformation didn't come from convincing or coercing. It came from compassion, the silent power that sees beyond fear and chooses love anyway. Because when compassion enters the room, fear no longer leads. The heart does. Reconnection begins within. Before you can bridge the gap between yourself and another person, especially someone who is emotionally avoidant, you must first bridge the gap within your own heart. The truth is, you cannot meet someone in peace if you are still at war with yourself. You cannot create safety for another if you are living in emotional chaos. The energy you bring into the relationship becomes the atmosphere both of you breathe, and that energy is born from your inner state. When you are grounded, compassionate, and centered, you radiate a presence that invites trust. When you are anxious, fearful, or reactive, you unintentionally mirror the very energy the avoidant person is trying to escape. That's why all real reconnection begins not with words or gestures, but with alignment, the inner work of becoming the calm you wish to experience. When an avoidant person pulls away, your instinct may be to chase or to demand clarity. That impulse often arises from your own unhealed fear of rejection, of abandonment, of not being enough. You might interpret their distance as proof that you're unloved, when in reality it's an invitation to meet your own wounds. Their withdrawal mirrors the parts of you that still seek validation outside yourself. And this is where the divine work begins. Reconnection isn't about convincing them to return. It's about using the space to return to yourself. It's about nurturing your peace, strengthening your sense of self, and becoming emotionally self-sufficient. The avoidant doesn't need you to fix them. They need you to embody stability. They need to feel that being close to you doesn't mean being swallowed by you. Our emotions. And you can only offer that kind of stability when you've cultivated it within. That's why the inner work is so powerful. It allows you to love without clinging, to care without controlling, and to offer presence without pressure. When you learn to regulate your emotions, to hold space for discomfort, and to find safety inside your own being, you naturally become the kind of person an avoidant can relax around. Your energy tells them, it's safe to be here. This kind of inner transformation isn't about detachment or indifference. It's about emotional sovereignty, the sacred ability to feel deeply without being consumed. You start to observe your emotions instead of reacting to them. You recognize your triggers, soothe them with awareness, and choose love over fear. This practice shifts your vibration. You become less dependent on external reassurance and more anchored in your inner truth. From that space, your communication changes. You no longer reach out from desperation. You reach out from peace. You no longer demand connection. You invite it. And that difference, though subtle, is what the avoidant heart can feel. Reconnection within also means healing the parts of you that believe love must be earned. Many people who attach to avoidant partners carry a subconscious belief that they must prove their worth to be chosen. But love, real love, isn't something you earn. It's something you embody. When you reconnect with your own worth, you stop chasing validation and start radiating confidence. You realize that your value doesn't diminish because someone else is afraid of intimacy. Their fear is theirs to heal. Your peace is yours to protect. From this place, you interact with them differently. You become a reflection of what calm, conscious love looks like. As your inner world softens, your outer relationships begin to mirror that peace. The avoidant person feels the shift even if you never say a word. They sense the absence of pressure, the quiet strength in your energy, the unconditional acceptance that doesn't demand change. That's when true reconnection begins. Not because you pushed harder, but because you align deeper. You are no longer seeking love from a place of emptiness. You are sharing it from a place of wholeness. And something sacred happens when you reach that state. The avoidant no longer feels pursued. They feel invited. They sense safety instead of expectation, authenticity instead of anxiety. The relationship becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. And even if they take time to respond, you remain steady because your peace no longer depends on their behavior. You have already found your center. Reconnection always begins within because love is an inside-out phenomenon. You cannot create harmony externally if there is turmoil internally. You cannot hold space for another's healing if you haven't cultivated space for your own. When you become still inside, you change the emotional frequency of the connection. You stop vibrating with fear and start radiating trust. And that trust becomes the beacon that draws the avoidant heart closer, not through force, but through resonance. In that moment, you realize the profound truth. The way back to them was always the way back to yourself. And so, as we come to the close of this journey, remember that every wall, every silence, every hesitation you faced was never the end. It was an invitation to rise higher in love, to lead with compassion, to return to peace within yourself. The avoidant isn't your enemy. They are your mirror, showing you where love still has room to expand, where patience still has power to heal. You have within you the strength to transform disconnection into understanding and fear into freedom. Choose love over pride, presence over reaction, faith over frustration, because the moment you do, you become the light that guides both hearts home. Thank you for sharing your time, your openness, and your spirit in His space. May you walk forward grounded in truth, guided by grace, and unshakable in love. Until we meet again, take care of your heart, and let your love be the peace that changes everything.